To hear more about this, I'm joined now by SREDA's President and CEO, Alex Fallon. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Well, how are you making your predictions for the coming year?
Yeah, well, this forecast and survey we've come out with is actually based on forecasts done by 6 other prominent economic forecasters, including some of the leading banks and also the Conference Board of Canada. And what we've done is kind of looked at those forecasts and taken a mean average of them to come up with the 2.1% GDP growth for 2018. So it's based on several experts pulling those forecasts together and coming up with the average.
So looking at those numbers, what kind of rebounds are you predicting?
Yeah, we're seeing, when we looked at the survey and looked at the other forecasters, we saw a consensus of moderate growth. So it's small growth, just over 2% for 2018. But, that's growth nevertheless, and it's a lot better than some provinces are doing. So we're pretty pleased to see a consensus of moderate growth across the board.
And what areas are you expecting that growth? What areas of the economy?
Yeah, a lot of that will hinge on how the agriculture sector performs this coming year. As more stabilization within some of the natural resource prices, oil and gas prices, bit of strength we see in the potash sector. So overall, we put that together and leads us to being pretty confident with the 2.1% forecast.
Mm-hmm. What about oil? Because that has been such a difficult area for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. What we see and what some of the other forecasters we polled see is a bit of stabilization there, which is good. That gives us a little bit more certainty. That'll help with some of the confidence around the capital investments. And again, seeing a little bit more stability there, which is good from a capital expenditure and confidence perspective as well.
So a little bit of growth in potash and agriculture. Are there areas that are looking a little more stagnant or even dropping?
Still some price concerns in some of the commodity markets, uranium, for example, and some of the others, looking for those to rebound longer term, but probably not so much in 2018 and 2019.
You mentioned very briefly that Saskatchewan's looking good compared to some other areas in Canada. How exactly is it growing in terms of relation to other provinces?
Yeah, if you take the 2.1% GDP growth for 2018, that's good enough for 4th when you compare that to other provinces in Canada. And then looking further ahead for 2019, we're forecasting 1.9% growth, and that actually bumps us up to 2nd place overall, just behind Alberta. So, pretty happy to be in those positions.
Definitely, and lots of change in the coming year as well, especially with this summer's legalization of marijuana. So how do you factor that into our economy?
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting to see how sales of that commodity do. But again, I think that speaks to some opportunity in terms of new sectors, emerging sectors. That's going to create some new jobs, employment. We'll have to see how the supply and demand does. But it's an interesting trend, and we think it will generate some new jobs in Saskatchewan and in Saskatoon.
Mm-hmm. And you're hosting a big economic conference in March. So what kinds of things will leaders be discussing then?
Yeah, well, the theme for our upcoming Economic Outlook Forum in March is the economic crossroads. So we see this is a very interesting time for Saskatoon and Saskatchewan with the slowdown in the resource sector. So we're going to be focusing a lot on some of those emerging sectors that are helping with our diversification. So whether it's technology, research, innovation, planning, entrepreneurship, Indigenous economic development opportunities, trying to look at a broad cross-section of what are the sectors that are going to drive growth in 2018 and 2019.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.